morning, boys and girls. If everybody could get out their trifold paper, we are finishing the last few sections of this paper. Okay, so get out the dot trifold paper. We're going to be completing boxes 1, 2, and 3. If you remember from the previous weeks, I'm sure you already know, and I don't have to tell you, but these boxes are about the story. So if you have not read or listened to the dot yet, make sure you go ahead and do that before we jump into answering these questions. And I hope you're enjoying the story as much as I do. It is one of my favorites, and I'm really sad that we can't read it and do some fun projects in the classroom with the story. But I hope you're enjoying it with your parents or at home, and maybe by the end of the week you can draw or do your own dot project and send me a picture of what you do. That would be pretty cool. I would enjoy that a lot. So just like every other week, boys and girls, we're going to start with box number 1 here with the respond question. And it says, what are some different ways to make art? Okay, so go ahead and give me 1 or 2 sentences here. When I'm done talking, you can go ahead and pause the video to answer the question. And then when you hit play, we'll resume to boxes 2 and 3. But think about different ways that you can make art. How can you create art? Think about what you do with Mrs. Garrett in the art room. You guys do tons of fun projects and do art in different ways there. So not only can you tell me what are some different ways to make art, but maybe you could tell me some ways to make art that you really enjoy doing. Do you love painting? Do you love clay? Do you love drawing? Okay, there's all different types of art out there, different fun things you can do with crafts and all of that, and making art pieces. So go ahead and again give me 1 or 2 sentences about different ways to make art, and then go ahead and describe your sentences with a picture at the bottom. All right, we're going to move on to box number 2, and then we'll head into box number 3. So box number 2, we're going to do a compare and contrast on Vashti, the cute little character in our story. I love Vashti, even though she has a crazy name, but I do love her for that as well. So we're going to be comparing Vashti from the beginning of the story to the end of the story. Now remember, when we're comparing and contrasting, we want to find things that are the same and things that are different. That's the whole point of comparing and contrasting. So for each box today, we're going to try to come up with 2 things to compare them, 2 differences and 2 similarities. So if we take a look, our top big box and our bottom big box, those are going to be our differences, all right? And what goes in the middle box? Things that are the same, or the similarities there. So again, we're going to try to find 2 from the story, and pay attention, because at the top is actually the end of the story, and at the bottom is actually the beginning of the story. So I'm going to start in the bottom box, and I'm going to kind of give you a little prompting question to come up with our first difference. How did Vashti feel at the very beginning of the story? How could you describe her feelings toward art? How could you describe her attitude at the very beginning of the story? Go ahead and give me 1 or 2 words there on how you could describe Vashti. And if you need to open up your book to take a look at some pictures or reread some things, don't be afraid to pause the video and check that out as well. So you might say, at the beginning of the story, Vashti was mad. She was not a happy camper there. She was kind of miserable, really. You could tell she wanted nothing to do with that artwork. She didn't even want to try to put anything on her paper. And that's why her teacher told her that funny joke. Oh, that's a good polar bear in a snowstorm, because her paper was completely white. Polar bears are white, snowstorms are white, so there was nothing there. It was just plain white. And Vashti at the time didn't think it was very funny, because her teacher was joking around with her, and she was grumpy, in a bad mood, because she didn't want to draw anything. So at the very beginning, she was mad, maybe grumpy, she was upset. Those are all good words to describe her at the beginning. How can we describe her at the end of the story? Okay, from the beginning to the end, how did she feel now about art and about drawing? Vashti finally felt happy, or maybe you say glad, about what she's doing. Okay, she was really happy about her artwork. She was proud about what she was doing, and she loved doing it. As you can see in the book, her gallery had tons of different art pieces all around, and she just didn't make one good art piece. She made many good art pieces. She just kept going and going, and none of her artwork, none of them look the same, which is pretty cool too. All right, going back to the beginning of the story, what's one more thing that we can compare from the beginning to the end of the story? One thing we could compare from the beginning to the end. Let's compare her artwork from the beginning to the end. How was Vashti's artwork at the very beginning? How was Vashti's artwork at the very beginning? You might say something like it was very simple. Okay. Maybe you say it was not good. Okay. Or maybe you say she didn't do any art at the beginning of the story, because would you call this art? Her teacher ended up calling it art, even though she just jabbed her pencil in the paper. But yeah, it wasn't very good. She didn't have very good effort. So at the beginning of the story, her artwork was very simple, or we could say it just wasn't very good, okay, because she wasn't trying very hard. But how can we compare that to the end of the story? How was Vashti's artwork different from the beginning to the end? We could say it's very good. Okay, or maybe we could say it's detailed. Lots of details. Detailed, there we go. There was lots of details, a lot of different pieces. She made a lot of artwork, okay? Right here, she only started with one piece of artwork that her teacher ended up framing for her, and then by the end, she had many, many pieces, so you could say something like that. All right, now one similarity, one thing that's the same from the beginning of the story to the end of the story. Think about what Vashti did at the beginning of the story and what she also was doing at the end of the story. She was drawing dots. Okay, at the beginning and the end she was doing that. Even though it was just a jab at the beginning, she was still drawing a dot. That's a dot. So she was drawing dots at the very beginning and the end of the story. Very good dots by the end of the story. What's one more thing that is similar from the beginning to the end? If you recall in the story, there was something Vashti's teacher told her to do to her artwork the very first time. She said, "Oh, very good. Now do this." And what did Vashti do to that artwork? You might have said her teacher made her sign her paper. And if you take a look at your story and look at her other art pieces, you'll notice that Vashti also signed her other pieces of art, claiming them that they were hers and showing people that she did those pieces. So we can say signed her, and I'm going outside my box here, sorry. She signed her work, okay? Signed her work. So whenever she completed an art piece, a new piece, she would sign Vashti in the corner of the paper, claiming that that art piece was hers. It was her special piece. And you guys do that in Mrs. Garrett's class, but usually on the back of your paper, you guys sign it or put your names. All right, we're done with the compare and contrast. Awesome job. Let's go ahead and we're going to be talking about Vashti and how she changes throughout the story from the beginning, the middle, and the end. Now, these boxes here, you're going to draw your pictures after we get our sentences into the box. So how could we describe Vashti at the very beginning of the story? We might be able to take some of this information in the middle box and compile it into one sentence here on how we think she was, or how she describe Vashti at the very beginning. So how do you think Vashti was at the very beginning of the story? What do you think? I'll start off by saying Vashti was, what was Vashti? Vashti was mad or upset. She was very mad or upset. She had a bad attitude about things. She didn't try very hard. Vashti didn't try very hard. All of those things could count, okay? How did that change from the middle of the story? So all of a sudden Vashti was mad. She wasn't trying very hard. How did she feel towards the middle of the story? We can say Vashti started trying a little harder. I'm just going to put trying because I don't have enough room for all of that. But Vashti started trying. She started to put some effort into her work, and she finally realized, hey, I can do this. Okay, I'm not a bad artist after all. So she started putting forth some effort, and she found that she could actually create some good work. So at the beginning, she was mad. She started trying a little harder. How can we describe her at the end of the story? Maybe we could say Vashti was confident. Or you could say Vashti made good work. Okay, Vashti painted pretty pictures. All right, so at the very beginning of the story, she was mad. She started trying a little harder. Maybe you could even say Vashti was finally happy about her work. Vashti was happy about her art pieces. All of those, boys and girls, are really good responses, okay? Once you either copy this or get your own response down and you draw your pictures, you are all done with this week 3 trifold paper. Next week we'll be heading into week 4, and I have there's not very many assignments for you next week, but a lot of fun Easter activities that you can dive into and just have some fun with it. So thank you for working hard this week. A couple more days, get through the work, and you'll be done, and the weekend will be here before you know it. Awesome job, and thank you for joining me today.